Apple are one of the largest growing multinational technology companies in the world. Founded by Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak in 1976, Apple were initially involved in computer development and innovation. Apple later expanded into making personal electronics, such as the iPod, and then further onto the iPhone in 2007. Due to Apple's abilities in innovation and development of new products, they have been able to gain a majority market share in the mobile phone sector as of 2011. This was previously held by Nokia, who in 2010 had roughly a 50% share in Australia's mobile phone market. Nokia had previously gained their leading share from Motorola in the 1990s by reducing the size of mobile phones. It was through Nokia's innovation of the mobile phone that they were able to gain majority market share. Ironically, Apple capitalized on Nokia's later inability to continue to revolutionize the mobile phone. It was with features such as video calling, retina display, 2 cameras with 2 views, multitasking, HD video recording and editing, a 5-megapixel camera with flash, facilitation of email and internet, as well as maps and a GPS function, and much more, that Apple were able to take over the leading mobile phone provider in the market. Recently, Samsung have emerged as a leading competitor and have seen a significant growth in their market share, however, are yet to overtake Apple. To stop history repeating itself, Apple need to ensure they continue to possess competitive nature whilst developing their products. If they fail to do so, Apple will suffer the same fate as Nokia and Motorola, ceasing to be relevant in the mobile phone market. Through analysing the mistakes of Motorola and Nokia, it is possible for Apple to avoid a similar fate. It is clear that through the lack of continuous change and innovation, as well as the adaptation to the ever-changing environment and landscape of the mobile phone market, that Motorola and Nokia lost relevance and therefore market share to companies that possessed these innovative traits.
Issues and problems. After analysing the case study, a number of issues and problems with the iPhone were able to be identified. Firstly, losing market share. Losing market share is a problem that Apple are facing. They have seen a reduction in their market share, which currently stands at 38%, with Samsung sitting at 35% market share. Previously, iPhone's market share has been around 45% at the end of 2016, which is a clear indication of an increased threat of competitors to market share. Innovation. In the past, Apple have been a leader in innovation. This needs to remain true if they want to continue to be successful in the mobile phone market. The mobile phone market is a rapidly changing landscape due to technological advances where innovation is the defining trait for a successful mobile phone company. Competitive advantage. For Apple to continue to hold their market share, it is important they hold a competitive advantage and continuously review how they differentiate their products in the marketplace. Apple's ability to distinguish themselves within the marketplace will attribute to how successful and relevant they will remain. Resistance to change. Due to the ever-changing dynamic of the market, it is clear Apple have to be accepting of any change. However, they must also think critically in the manner in which they present and manage these deviations and how they are implemented throughout the organisation and their products. Clear and direct leadership. In recent years, Apple have been seen to have lost their initial direction and vision of the company. It is important to have management that have a strong sense of direction and mission statement. With this, Apple will be able to effectively work towards a clearer vision, thus strengthening their organisation. Strategic management. It is also important for Apple to implement certain strategic management processes to ensure that they retain a competitive advantage in market share. With lack of strategic management, they will see Apple as a company fall behind as other companies such as Nokia and Motorola have done so in the past. Impact of external environment and changing business landscape. The mobile phone market has an ever-changing business landscape due to technological advances and innovations from competitors. Customers' wants and needs also have a large impact upon the expectations of a product, dictating the type of features implemented and developed.
After further evaluation of the problems surrounding the case, 3 key issues were able to be noted in relation to the iPhone and Apple. These key issues are change in innovation, strategic management, and environmental impacts. To remain relevant and to continue to dominate the mobile phone markets, Apple need to further develop their strategic competitiveness in change and innovation. One key element of the current company that is currently jeopardizing its market position in the future is a lack of direction and absent strength in mission statements, which is the strongest approach to driving an organization forward to an innovative and forward-thinking future. Through the developments of the iPhone, Apple have created some of the biggest innovations for society in the most recent future. However, to continue to remain relevant, continuous innovation is imperative. Implementing change can be one of the hardest elements to restructure, especially for a well-developed organization. However, this is also imperative for Apple as a company to participate in for its future within the sector. A stronger sense of strategic competitiveness needs to be adopted by Apple in regards to the iPhone to remain a competitor in the mobile phone market. It can be seen that Apple as a company need to move toward being more of a learning organization where there are greater provisions that denote to continuous innovation throughout the company. This also needs to be shown through the greater development of mission statement and a clearer understanding of the direction the organization is going to head in for the iPhone. A greater sense of innovation may need to be adopted by Apple in order to hold on to their competitive edge. This would include both the innovation of the iPhone itself as a product and also the way in which it's manufactured. Hamel's wheel of innovation involves 5 steps for leading the innovation process in organizations: imagining, designing, experimenting, assessing, and scaling. Facilitate staff and management for thinking of innovative directions to move forward. Allow for greater budget for innovative ideas for products to be prototyped, even if it results in failure. Therefore, lessons are still learned. Enable hackathons to be facilitated to a larger degree and differing formats in order for ideas to be built upon. Adopt a larger forum for assessment of ideas and innovation using the method of what I liked and what you could do differently to analyse colleagues. Involve all levels of the business in scaling and decision making, a greater sense of impact and involvement for all employees. Commercialising innovation is the process of turning new ideas into products or processes that can make an economic difference to profits through higher scales or reduced costs. The individuals in leadership positions should be involved in the innovation process to ensure employees understand that innovation matters. These leaders also need to ensure the strategic direction of the company, that managers get direct input. These individual leaders need to be educated and prepared to act in the implementation of change. Kotter's 8-step change model can be used as a tool to implement any changes that need to be actioned within the company. It can be done so by using the following steps. Number 1, to create a sense of urgency. Number 2, to build a guiding coalition. Number 3, form a strategic vision and initiatives. Number 4, enlist a volunteer army. Number 5, enable action by removing barriers. 6, to generate short-term wins. 7, sustain acceleration. Number 8, institute change. Facilitate for all employees to have an option to suggest ideas for change. Allow for all employees to have a voice in the areas the changes will ultimately be implemented. And follow a plan such as Kotter's 8-step change model in order to implement changes into the workplace.
The key theories of strategic management applicable to the iPhone case are sustainable strategic competitiveness, which is concerned with maintaining a competitive advantage, and strategic management processes, which include a SWOT analysis in order to ensure the business can maintain their competitive advantage. This is a key issue for Apple and the iPhone, as the emergence of Samsung's increasing market share suggests that if Apple do not change their strategies, they will lose their competitive advantage and thus their profitability and market share. Strategic management is the formulation and implementation of major goals and initiatives taken by the company based on considerations of resources and assessment of internal and external environments in which the organisation competes. Apple's mission statement identifies innovating in a way others cannot as a clear directive to achieve success. In order to fulfill this mission statement, in a time of increasing pressure from competitors within the market, Apple must engage in effective strategic management. The essence of strategic management is to look ahead, understanding the environment and the organisation, and effectively positioning the organisation for competitive advantage in changing times. During the early years, Apple's iPhone was easily able to penetrate the market and quickly capture market share. This was due to a lack of strategic planning from Nokia, combined with Apple's rigorous strategic planning. This allowed Apple to sustain a competitive advantage based on their innovation. However, in this modern marketplace, Apple is facing increasing pressure from competitors such as Samsung, who are attempting to stifle Apple's competitive advantage by also creating innovative products. Therefore, Apple must continue to change their strategic management in order to maintain a competitive advantage. This can be done through the strategic management process. The strategic management process can be broken into two main sections: strategy formulation and strategy implementation. Strategy formulation is concerned with the processes of creating strategies. This begins with identifying the current mission, objectives, and strategies of the company. This allows Apple to gain a clear sense of mission and objectives and sets the stage for assessing resources available to compete with opportunities and threats within the marketplace. The next step in the strategic management process is to carry out a SWOT analysis. A SWOT analysis analyses the internal and external environment in which a business operates. The internal environment consists of strengths and weaknesses, while the external environment consists of opportunities and threats. SWOT analysis allows Apple to identify areas in which they differ from competitors, as well as areas of improvement. This allows Apple to identify their competitive advantage over competitors and thus emphasize them in order to retain competitive sustainability. SWOT analysis also allows Apple to identify areas where the iPhone is inferior to competitors and allowing them to reduce any potential gaps and nullify competitors' advantages. From this analysis, the mission, objectives, and strategies of a business can be revised and modified if necessary to maintain a competitive advantage. Strategy implementation is the process of putting strategies into action. However, every strategy, no matter how well formulated, cannot achieve long-term success if not properly implemented. Therefore, any strategy formulated by Apple must be properly implemented, beginning with top-level managers. Thus, effective leadership for Apple in the post-Steve Jobs era is of utmost importance. Leaders must be able to effectively motivate staff in order to successfully implement strategy. This responsibility falls to CEO Tim Cook, who must motivate and govern his staff in order to ensure strategic goals are met. The objectives of strategic management are to ensure Apple maintain their competitive advantage in the face of increasing threat from competition. An action plan is a useful tool to maintain a sustainable competitive advantage. The action plan contains 3 goals to help Apple maintain a competitive advantage. In the short term, SWOT analysis is used to create a sense of internal and external environment of the organisation. In the medium term, a review of goals will ensure Apple remains committed to current goals and continues to evolve them in order to remain competitive. Finally, in the long term, establishing a team of leaders will assist the CEO and ensure that strategies formulated are correctly implemented.
The mobile phone industry is one of the most rapidly changing and innovative marketplaces around the world. It is also one of the most competitive markets as well and is therefore important for companies to keep up with the changing landscape. In the past, companies like Nokia and Motorola have failed to keep up and fallen into irrelevance and ultimately failed as a result. There are many environmental factors that can influence a company like Apple, whether it be certain materials they use in their products or features demanded by consumers. These factors are forever changing, and it is the responsibility of the company to keep up with these trends to ensure that they can effectively compete. Gaining a competitive advantage can go a long way to ensuring that a company like Apple can remain relevant and continue to be successful in the mobile phone market. Having a competitive advantage means an organization is able to distinguish themselves from its competitors, whether it be through product, price, customer service, or quality. This gives the company the ability to continually produce something of high value to its consumers, and its competitors are unable to replicate. If Apple are able to gain a competitive advantage, they can expect to remain as an industry leader for some time. It is important that business leaders are able to recognize and understand the impact the external environment has on the organization. The general environment is a term used to describe the background conditions that make up the external environment of an organization. The major factors that form the general environment include economic conditions, socio-cultural conditions, political legal conditions, and natural environmental conditions. For an organization, it is important to understand the effects these factors can have on business activities and, where possible, use this to gain a competitive advantage. The specific environment refers to the organizations, groups, and people with whom they interact and conduct business with. These can often be referred to as stakeholders, and each can have an impact on how the organization conducts business. The important stakeholders include customers, suppliers, competitors, regulators, and all have to be taken into consideration. If Apple are able to understand and recognize how these stakeholders can affect their business and where they are able to use these influences to gain a competitive advantage, they will be able to continue to be successful. An organization will usually have little influence on its external environment, which can cause environmental uncertainty. This can make it difficult for an organization to predict future implications certain environmental factors may have on them. It is important for a company like Apple to effectively manage these uncertainties and limit any negative impacts that may be caused. An organization must also manage its internal environment and develop a strong organizational culture. These are the shared beliefs and values developed and implemented throughout the organization. A strong culture can create a clear vision for the organization to work towards, allowing individuals to rally and work towards a common goal. It is important that an organization has a strong leader that can establish and maintain core values. These core values should pass three criteria: relevance, persuasiveness, and strength. To avoid going the same route as Motorola and Nokia, Apple need to gain an understanding of how both the external and internal environment can have an effect on business and its ability to succeed. Firstly, they need to be ahead of changing trends with the external environment and be able to implement these changes as quickly as possible to ensure they have a competitive advantage. This also means managing any environmental uncertainty and limiting the negative impacts this uncertainty may have. Secondly, Apple should look to implement a strong organizational culture with a set of core values that passes talked about criteria. This will also give the entire organization a clear vision to work towards and motivate people to achieve. Along with this, they will need to have a leader that is able to establish and maintain these core values to ensure the culture is universally bought into. Implementation of the following should help Apple to stay relevant and competitive within the mobile phone industry. To implement the problem-solving objectives, an action plan will be used. An action plan has 3 goals: a short-term goal, a medium-term goal, and a long-term goal. Short-term goal for Apple will be to analyze current environment and identify opportunities to gain a competitive advantage. Third goal will be to develop core values of the organizational culture. And then finally, the long-term goal will be to implement the culture with a leader who is able to establish and maintain core values.